back one day from the Arnold. Came back on a Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, and going into the University of South Florida. Dr. Bill Campbell, one of his students, Andres Vargas, is defending his thesis, and I'm on his thesis committee. So I'm going to go in and rip him to shreds. Just kidding. But we do have a thesis committee meeting, and he's going to be defending it. And so this is going to be pretty cool. I've been on the other side of the thesis defense, where I was defending. Never been on this side of it, so should be cool. Gonna learn some new stuff about DUP, since that's what Andres' research was on, and looking forward to seeing if what his results are, even though I've read through his paper already, what his results were, and maybe some ways we can further that research in the future. So got about a 25-minute drive on over to USF, and going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to this. So this is I'm only back for one day, and I got a lot of stuff to do, but the grind don't stop for greatness, and especially when you're I don't have to do stuff like this. I've been an adjunct thesis advisor before, but I really enjoy it, especially with younger students who have reached out, and either they say they want my help or they look up to me. This is always a really cool experience for me. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I know Andres, he's a good kid, competitive powerlifter, and this is exactly what the fitness industry needs. It needs people who are competitors, who love this stuff, who live this stuff, who
in half a mile, turn
want
right
to
onto Simmons Road.
Quiet Siri, who want to further the research. That's super important. That's how I got involved, and so I always love helping out with kids like that.
So, the name of my thesis is Tiered versus Traditional Daily Undulating Periodization for Improving Powerlifting Performance in Trained Males. The first part of this presentation is pretty much what I went over at the thesis proposal, so I'll kind of go a little quicker through that so we can spend a little more time on the results and discussion. Periodization is a deliberate variation of training stimulus. So there's a manipulation of training volume and intensity, which is the most common way to manipulate the training variables. When consistently demonstrated to be superior to, or periodized training has been consistently demonstrated to be superior to non-periodized resistance training. Nonlinear and linear periodization. Linear periodization progresses training from high volume and low intensity to lower volume and higher intensities. This has been shown to be effective for increasing strength. There's a possible loss of fitness traits due to each microcycle being focused on one trait. So you might lose the adaptation of the higher volume as you get into the lower volume and higher intensity. Nonlinear periodization uses regular undulations in volume and intensity throughout each microcycle, with large positive effects on maximal strength. And this sort of allows for simultaneous improvement of multiple fitness traits, which is perhaps an improvement upon the linear periodization model. And indeed, nonlinear periodization has been shown to be superior to linear periodization for increasing maximal strength. Then we get into daily undulating periodization, which has become a very popular form of nonlinear periodization. This features daily undulations in volume and intensity throughout a week or microcycle, and it's been shown to be effective for increasing strength. Dr. Mike Zordos completed a study that has now been published, and I forgot to update that. Compared two models of DUP in 18 trained male powerlifters, 6 weeks of powerlifting training, and the training consisted of squats, bench press, and deadlift. He focused on 2 different workout orders throughout the week, basically starting either with hypertrophy, power, and then strength, or hypertrophy, strength, and then power. So he wanted to see if the order of the workouts throughout the week changed the adaptation to the training or increase strength any differently. Both groups experienced significant increase in squat and deadlift. The effect size was greater for the hypertrophy power strength group. Only hypertrophy power and strength group experienced significant increase in bench press, and the HPS group resulted in significantly greater total and relative volume, which may have been responsible for the greater bench press 1 rep max and effect sizes with the squat and deadlift. The tier system, which was popularized by Joe Ken, he emphasized max effort on 1 movement per session, and that max effort movement was rotated throughout the week so that you could focus on 1 lift basically per day. This can be applied to the DUP model with respect to squat, bench press, and deadlift, with each being emphasized on different days of the week. And this could improve performance on plus sets and result in greater volume over time. More volume equals possibly greater strength adaptations, and it may allow for better recovery given that you're not performing all of your plus sets on the same day. So the methods for this study, 47 healthy college-age males were recruited. Each of them needed at least 6 months of training, which was 3 days per week, at least 3 days per week for the last 6 months of training. They needed to be able to squat 1.25 times their body weight, bench press their body weight, and deadlift 1.5 times their body weight. And they needed to have experience with the power lifts. Testing protocols, we had 1 rep max testing in accordance with the NSCA protocol. USAPL standards were used for the determination of a successful lift. The order of the testing was squat, then bench press, then deadlift, in accordance with USAPL and competition order. The powerlifting total, as mentioned before, is 1 rep max squat plus 1 rep max bench press plus 1 rep max deadlift. And the Wilks score was calculated using formula based on body weight and powerlifting total. The training protocol, they worked out 3 times per week. It was a 10-week study with a pre-testing / familiarization week, then 8 weeks of resistance training, and then a post-testing week. And working weight was progressed based on plus set performance from the previous week. Back squat 1 rep max was not significantly different between groups after 10 weeks. We failed to reject that null hypothesis, and the same can be said for all 5 of them. So we failed to reject each of the null hypotheses based on the fact that there was no interaction effect that was observed for any of the strength variables. But there was a main effect for time observed for 1 rep max in the bench press, back squat, deadlift, powerlifting total, and Wilks score. And this is sort of a good little chart to see just how much they did increase over time. They increased their total by approximately 50 kilograms in the regular DUP group, and in the tiered DUP group, 49.4 kilos. That represented an 11.8 and 11.6% change respectively. And then you can kind of see 22.8 kilograms on the squat, 19.2 for the tiered group, about the same in the bench press, and the deadlift saw a slight difference here, 16.4 kilos for the regular DUP group and 18.7 for the tiered group. The discussion here, so there was a strength increase in DUP and TDUP, and it was pretty remarkable for each independent variable measured. Workload, volume, intensity was equated between groups. Distribution of workload was different, obviously, given that the workouts were a bit different throughout the week. Both groups experienced large gains in strength over time, greater than that seen in some similar studies. Lack of previous exposure to well-designed powerlifting program could be an explanation as to why we saw such big increases in strength. Although they had resistance training experience and powerlifting experience, it's plausible to assume that they weren't exposed to such a rigorous, well-designed program. The magnitude of the strength improvement would not have been accomplished had the subject been training on their own. Differences in strength gains were not significantly different between groups. However, there were slight differences that could be practically significant for powerlifting performance. The regular DUP group experienced a 3.6 kilo greater increase in squat, or 7.9 pounds. And the DUP group experienced a 2.3 kilogram greater increase in deadlift. So these could make differences in competition, especially at a very competitive, in a very competitive field. And so this could suggest that DUP may be more efficacious for a lifter who wants to increase their back squat, and while TDUP may be a little more efficacious for somebody who wants to maximize their deadlift strength. Sustainability. So we saw that a dropout rate was greater in the traditional group, 50% in the traditional group versus 33% in the tiered group. So this could suggest that traditional DUP is less sustainable or less enjoyable compared to tiered DUP. And we know that the number one key to success in a program is consistency in completing the work. Furthermore, the overall dropout rate of 42% is troubling. The dropout rate observed may indicate that DUP in general is unsustainable for long-term training. Participants remarked about aches and pains, while many welcomed a break from training after completing the study. So that's very anecdotal, of course. We don't have data to show that they were overtrained or anything like that. But complaining of pain and not wanting to do the workouts could be a sign of potentially overtraining and future injury. And although effective for producing impressive strength gains, DUP may be better suited for short-term training blocks, such as a peaking protocol for a powerlifting meet. So the practical applications, DUP may be better for increasing back squat strength, while TDUP may be better for increasing deadlift strength. Varying the exercise order may be just as effective as strict exercise order with respect to powerlifting performance. And the tiered system may increase adherence, and DUP in general may be best used as a peaking protocol rather than a long-term plan.
It was good, but I think the big thing will be you got to go back through there and look at the dropout rate and see if you can determine a significant difference, because then that is a big deal, right? Because I mean, look at me, right? Like I've been out of competition in powerlifting for a year and a half, and so if I could use something that would keep me healthier, keep me engaged longer, exactly. Yeah,
Thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're a super busy guy.
No, I'm just leaving town again tomorrow.
Yeah, how was the Arnold?
It's good.
Yeah?
It's good, yeah. I actually got several ideas for what I want to do research-wise. The discussion about intensity, volume, I would like to see if there's a volume threshold, intensity threshold for volume, where volume becomes so meaningful, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, like, we get the people say, oh, Layne, could I just do a 45-pound bar, 1,000 reps of it, right?
No.
And we probably inherently know that that's not correct, but
there's nothing out
there's
there
no
to
literature,
say.
right?
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to look at, I don't know, 20, 50, 80% and see, or as many tiers as you could get with having enough people
See
and
where
see if
it
you
is.
actually, like, where is that break point where volume becomes meaningful versus intensity, because I think there probably is that.
I think so.
I think if you train to failure, I think that you get a lot of the same benefits in terms of hypertrophy, but then your volume's different, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting how we work on that.
Just from remembering what I've looked over, I don't know if they did it in relation to hypertrophy or if they did it in relation to strength, but I think there is a little bit of data out there as to a general area where the adaptations start to occur at a greater rate.
Yeah.
So I think it's somewhere in the 60% range.
Yeah.
And so that'd be great though if you could pin it down to
a
here it
little
is.
more, because it's essentially same studies I did as in nutrition, except I did it for leucine.
Right.
Like trying to figure out where that break point was.
Yeah. So would you do it like in intervals of like 5% or like 2.5%, or?
I don't know, because it would just depend on. Because here's the problem, right? Depends on how much volume you want to give them.
Yeah.
Because if you want to, like, what if I wanted to say, okay, we're going to base it off of, I'm going to do one set of 20%, have them take it to failure, and I'm going to base everything else around that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Yeah, there's infinite number of ways you could do it. I think I would probably look at, okay, what's a traditional kind of program?
Yeah.
Maybe even pick a popular program that's out there.
Would you want to do
Try.
it with highly trained people, or would you want to do it with like intermediates? Not beginners, because that would, I mean, they'll just respond to anything. But
probably intermediates, just because it's easier to get numbers.
yeah, it's much easier to get intermediates.
It's very hard to get an advanced person. Here you're going to do 20%.
But yeah, and that's the problem is once you get to people who are really advanced, then they either have a coach or they're not interested in doing anything other than.
Or they think they know more than you.
Yeah, or they think they know more than you.
Exactly.
So yeah.
This is why I use rats in graduate school, because they'll do what you tell them.
They will, but that's
if only
tedious.
if only we could get them to squat, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You know, they actually found a way to get them to do squats.
Really?
Right? Did you know that they actually, like, there's actually a rat apparatus that they hook them into, and they
Oh
just
my
give them a
God.
little zap on the tail.
Oh my
You know what
gosh.
I mean?
And they get them to do squats.
Yeah, let's just do them with some DUP.
Oh my gosh.
All right, bud. Good work,
Hey,
man.
thank
Proud
you
of
very much.
Awesome work. Yep. Just finished up Andres' thesis defense, and he passed. Did a great job. Really, really interesting study. You guys saw some of it. You know, looking at kind of tiered DUP versus your traditional DUP, where you're doing your squat, bench, deadlift all together, one after the other, versus tiering it to where whatever your most intense lift is, you're doing that first. And didn't have any differences in absolute strength. However, there was, we don't know if it's statistically significant, they need to analyze the data, but there did seem to be a difference in dropout rates. And so that's important. You know, we talk about longevity, we talk about being consistent, we talk about something that's sustainable. And I talk about sustainability with diet a lot. Well, training is very important too. And obviously, like I've gone through my share of injuries, and you know, if I can find something that possibly is a little more sustainable, then that's gonna be something I'm interested in. So very cool always to get your first peek at research, you know, probably a year before it's gonna be published, and obviously be involved in his journey towards his now his master's. He'll have finished, and then he's going to go do his PhD at Arizona State. Andres actually came to a camp I did in Denver in 2014 with Dr. Mike Zordos, Ben Escrow, Ryan Doris, and actually was asking me about graduate school there. And yeah, I guess it's really cool to see, not trying to take credit for it all, but you know, maybe I've had a positive effect on some kids who are interested in going to graduate school or have questions about it. So pretty cool to see, you know, 3 years later that, or 2.5 years later, to see that extended through the end. So he's going to be doing his PhD now, and wants to be a professor, which is really cool because being a coach is great, but we also need people to actually do the research. So very proud of him, and looking forward to seeing what he does in the future.